WWT presents Experts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. I'm your host, Matthew Coble, as always. And today we're going to be talking about AI and the federal civilian agency space. So as we all know, artificial intelligence holds incredible potential for federal civilian agencies, from personalizing citizen services to optimizing critical infrastructure. But many agencies are at varying levels of maturity, so the path to AI success is kind of multifaceted and a bit complex. The WWT experts joining us today are going to share some common strategies that federal civilian agencies can use to chart their AI journeys. We'll discuss frameworks to accelerate AI adoption, high-impact use cases, power and cooling considerations, data maturity, and much, much more. So, joining me today, a couple experts. First, Kevin Pearson is the AVP of Federal Civilian at Worldwide Technology and brings nearly 30 years of leadership in the federal IT space. In his work with our clients, he specializes in modernizing infrastructure, enhancing cybersecurity, and integrating advanced technologies like AI and automation. As a trusted advisor to federal civilian agencies, he drives innovation and ensures seamless digital services for all of us citizens. Also with us, Mike Trojecki is Senior Director of our AI practice at Worldwide Technology. Mike built his career aligning business and technology needs for clients really of all kinds. And over the years, he's mastered everything from network troubleshooting to building powerhouse teams to driving strategic client engagements. He left Intel to join WWT back in 2024 and is now part of our team that's leading the way with helping our clients make the most out of their new AI solutions. Gentlemen, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, well, let's jump right in.
Looking forward to being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So what are some of the key differences you're seeing in AI and data maturity across the diverse landscape of all those federal civilian agencies that are out there?
It's a great question, and there is a lot of diversity into where they are in their journey. We've got some agencies just based on their mission that are early adopters in general with technology, and that is also the case certainly with data and AI. And then we've got some folks that, due to maybe budget constraints and just resource constraints, are a little bit further behind, and maybe their missions aren't quite as technology leading to begin with. So I think we have, like a lot of markets would, a really large span of where they are in their journey.
Yeah, and I can tell you from my side, looking at this, there is the diversity across those customers. I mean, like Kevin talked about, there is so many different applications that can be used and so many different things that can be done. Some of them are low cost, some of them are high cost, but it's very mission dependent for that agency. And when we look at that and we look at how our customers are deploying AI, it really depends on, again, their mission for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Well, I imagine that some federal civilian agencies out there are just getting started with their AI journeys. As you talk with them, what counsel do you provide in terms of finding those high impact areas in which they should start?
Yeah, I think like any type of technology, it really is around value creation. And what's interesting when you're working with the government is the value that you think about in most arenas is going to be around business value, right? And that's not necessarily, while budgets and things like that are part of it, this is not a for-profit industry. And so it's really around the mission, like Mike was talking about earlier. And it's how do you create value either internally or to the citizens that they ultimately support.
And different in the commercial, that enterprise world that we deal in as well, a lot of the reasons people are deploying these types of solutions come down to how am I going to reduce risk, risk management, how am I going to increase profitability, how am I going to improve efficiency throughout a company. And a lot of those things still pertain in that federal civilian space, but they're really looking at things like citizen engagement. How am I helping my citizens interact better with government? Right? How am I using AI applications to actually drive a better experience for employees as well, help them do their job better and be more efficient? It becomes less about a revenue goal, but still that risk management and that customer experience and that employee experience become really important.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I want to build on this a little bit and ask you, in the business world, I think we think more about driving business outcomes, but I appreciate that federal civilian agencies are thinking more about mission. So how does that change how they think about, the work that they're doing, especially with AI?
Yeah, I think it's really more about outcome and citizen-facing outcomes. We've got even examples of one of the national labs that we work with, as an example, is using AI to look at how AI is impacting the power grid, which has obviously been a huge part of this entire rapid expansion of all the data and the power needs that are associated with that. And so they're using AI to look at how AI is affecting the power grid, which is certainly just one example. And you've also got folks like SSA and IRS that are more maybe looking at fraud detection and things like that. So it's really around what those use cases are. I think, underlying technology of it is similar, right? It's things that they can use, like Mike talked about, from the commercial world, and just use it in a little bit more of a different application.
And thinking about the agencies you just spoke, maybe some of the ones you just spoke about or others, are there some specific examples that you can provide us of an agency that's more advanced in the use of AI and sort of pushing the boundaries and doing some interesting things? And if so, like, what are some lessons that you think other agencies could learn from some of those early adopters?
Yeah, the early adopters tend to be folks like NOAA, hurricane as an example, the new hurricane tracking system, and trying to get better predictability on where a hurricane's going to go, so that you can get more aligned with state and local governments on evacuation plans and things like that. So we've seen that. You've also seen things like TSA with if you have global entry and it's just now it's facial recognition, you don't have to necessarily interact with another human. They've got the ability to use AI to connect people with different linguistic experts as you're coming in and out of different countries. And so those are the things I think that have been a little bit more forward leaning and from a government perspective. Mm-hmm.
And you also look at, you mentioned TSA and what's going on, facial recognition, where you're going up, you don't need to scan your boarding pass most times anymore, but also looking at managing crowds, managing the wait times within the airport, right? How do you accurately tell somebody that these gates are backed up, go to the other gates, right? Those are important things where we're using different algorithms and different solutions to help manage crowds. And that's another interesting play that is coming in the AI world as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, what role can platforms like AI Studio, AI Factory, and AI Foundry play in helping federal agencies accelerate their AI adoption and how they move through operations with that?
Yeah, one of the things when you look at when we're building this out, we focus with our customers on helping them build out their AI centers of excellence. And when you look at that and you look at the studio, the foundry and factory side, right, you've got to be able to identify the use cases and look at the data management piece, which really comes into that AI studio piece of this, and then go into the foundry and factory side where you're actually building out these solutions, building the infrastructure to support what these AI solutions are going to be. And they don't necessarily have to be in an on-prem environment. They can be in cloud. It could be in a hybrid type model. But that kind of framework of AI Studio, AI Foundry, AI Factory is so important in helping to build out a center of excellence for our customers. And that's where we like to see them start, right? It's not start, you don't have to tackle every problem all at once. So when you get into that studio phase, you're looking at that, basically the identification of use cases. How do we move forward? How are we going to make an impact? How is AI going to make an impact? Right. And then from that point, you build into where is this going to go? Is this going to be, built on site? Is this going to be built in the cloud? Right. And then, how do we deploy and manage as well? So that's going to be an interesting one. And I know some of the other things, and you had mentioned this earlier, Kevin, about, the power grid piece and how we're managing the power piece of this. That becomes a really important piece of that kind of foundry and factory side of what does the power and cooling piece look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you mentioned there is very important, where our customers are definitely at different stages of whether they're cloud, on-prem, a hybrid of both, which is probably the most common. But that mix is always going to be a little bit different with the different agencies that we work with. So the ability of these technologies to be implemented in any type of environment and kind of start somewhere, like you said, is very important.
Yeah, and that's the model that we're putting in place with our customers, right? Is helping them start that journey and not try and take on everything all at once. Like I said a few seconds ago, is start with that first use case, figure out how it's going to impact your citizens, how it's going to impact your employees, and start there. Don't try and take on everything all at once.
Well, I know here at Worldwide Technology, when we talk about AI, we also talk about the underlying data, right? And that data has to be designed to deliver the great outcomes we're trying to get to with AI. So I'm curious how federal agencies are overcoming challenges around data quality, data management, data security probably weaves in there too, to really be ready to do all the things that they can do with AI.
Yeah, I think security is absolutely a huge piece of it, right? With everything that they're doing in this whole kind of transition to digital and all of the things they're trying to accomplish, cyber's got to be at the forefront of it. I do think the data modernization challenge is a big one in the federal government, and I think it's a challenge with all customers, but the federal government certainly. You've got interagency problems at times between sharing data, like in a disaster recovery situation, as an example, things like that, and so. Part of it is just getting their hand around what data they have. As we all know, it's you're getting out what you put in, and you've got to have actionable data. And I think one of the things we've seen success with is agencies that start small. We just kind of talked about that, but start with something that's small, digestible, so you can prove it out before you try to do this at scale. Because it's just a huge obstacle to try to start with the largest use case that you can think of. And I think that especially for the agencies that are a little bit earlier on in implementing these technologies, they've got to start somewhere that's digestible, that they can get to an outcome. These are not quick turn solutions, right? This takes a lot of time to implement. And so especially for the kind of more resource thin agencies, they've got to start somewhere so that they can prove it out and build upon that going forward.
And I would tell you some of the research type agencies that fall into this are probably doing a better job on the data management side than some of the other agencies. And we wake up and look at this as data as one of the most critical areas of deploying an AI solution. You've got to have a data strategy in place. You've got to have data management solutions in place, because otherwise everything you're going to do from an AI standpoint, even something as simple as a chatbot or a RAG type architecture, you're going to have data that is going to create hallucinations. It's going to provide incorrect information, right? So you've got to focus on that. So when you look, going back to that studio, the foundry and factory side of things, in that AI studio piece, the data management, data strategy piece is extremely critical. And how are those agencies handling it now? I don't think anybody is really doing a great job as far as data management and putting together a solid data strategy. And that just isn't across federal, civilian, that's across just all federal. But it's also into the enterprise, that commercial world as well, that we just have a lack of clean data to work with. And that's a lot of the time that's spent in trying to deploy these solutions, is figure out if we have the data in a way, in a format that we need to deploy AI.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you both think that federal civilian agencies will really kind of slow down and do that hard behind the scenes work it takes to get their data in order? And how do you encourage them to do that?
They have to, is the reality. If they are going to deploy AI solutions, they're going to have a data strategy in place, and they're going to need to focus on the data management piece, or they'll never realize the benefits of AI. It'll probably hurt them more deploying AI than it would. Let me rephrase that. It'll hurt them more in trying to deploy AI if they don't have a good data management strategy in place. So that my advice to any of them would be focus on that data management piece. Make sure you've got your quote unquote data house in order.
Yeah, I would agree. And when you talk about the time, effort, and resource to deploy these models, if you don't do it correctly, right, to your point, it can be more damaging, because now you've got an opportunity cost on the time and resource that you spent to implement it. And then if you're not getting the outcome that you need, it just builds upon itself, and now you have a bigger problem than you started with, probably.
All right, well, gents, I know that power and cooling has emerged as a significant challenge for AI deployment, and I imagine that federal civilian agencies face that too, as they're looking at building out their infrastructures to support AI. So, what are they thinking with that?
Yeah, I can tell you that is one of the things that I wake up every morning thinking about, is we can deploy and bring all these AI solutions to our customers in these agencies. But when it comes down to it, there's a chance that they don't have anywhere to deploy it from a space, from a power standpoint, from a cooling standpoint. These solutions that we're deploying, what used to be a rack that might have been 12, 13 kilowatts, these things are now getting over 100 kilowatts. And that's an incredible increase in power requirements, the power needed, but it's also the power needed to cool it and the cooling solutions. So we're starting to hear a lot more about liquid cooling. Obviously, air-cooled is still predominant. We can still do a lot with air cooling. But as these AI solutions start to grow even larger and we start to see even more power consumption, liquid cooling is going to be a necessity. The interesting thing is, over the last year, we've done a number of these AI days, and we'll continue to do those coming into the new year. One of the breakout sessions that had been the most popular during these AI days is the power and cooling area, talking about what it takes to prepare your infrastructure for AI. And one of the things that we've been doing is doing these assessments and helping our customers assess their environment from a power, cooling, space, even down to cabling and where things should sit physically in a rack. We've got those capabilities, and that is what a customer needs to do, is really evaluate and take a step back and say, okay, what does the physical infrastructure look like? Not the network infrastructure, that's part of it as well, but what does the physical infrastructure look like, and where can I deploy this? Power, you look at some of these things and you look at what's happening with some of the nuclear providers around the country that are building data centers next to the nuclear plants. So you look at 3 Mile Island and you look at Microsoft and the deal that they struck there to build a Microsoft data center at 3 Mile Island to deal with the power, and particularly the power piece, not the cooling piece. But you're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to start to see federal agencies start to build out new power solutions and try and find new generation to support the applications that they want to deploy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it really is it's being talked about a lot more now, right, as we get further and further along in this challenge. But I think it's going to drive a lot of innovation within the power and cooling industry. The solutions that are out there today are incredible and can do a lot of this. But to Mike's point, some of this is, I think, to be determined, because the power and cooling technology just can't keep up with the speed of the data center builds and just the amount of consumption that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, throughout this, you've both spoken to some examples of ways in which federal civilian agencies are making use of AI, certain use cases that they're seeing. I wonder if there are others that you're seeing out there that are interesting, or there are others you see that are opportunities that they may not be exploring yet that you think should be explored.
I think there are a lot of cool things out there. One of the really interesting thing about working with the civilian agencies is all the different things that they do, right? They're involved in every sector that exists. And I think things, even like customer service lines for folks that are calling in for Social Security, Medicare, and things like that. I know not everybody's necessarily a fan of the automated voice prompts and things like that, but from an efficiency standpoint, absolutely, there's been a lot of efficiencies gained with AI and call centers across the government, and that's one example. I think, again, we mentioned fraud detection, which ultimately does save the government money and hopefully helps us with our the debt problem and things like that. But I think that from a citizen-facing standpoint, we mentioned things like better, more efficient airport experiences, which we would all be a fan of, and I think there are just a lot of them out there that are critical, like back to the hurricane predictability and things like that, and then others that we don't necessarily think about every day. But I think anything that can be better for citizen experience when interfacing with the government and the services that are out there in the transportation world, and again, things like healthcare, I think that can be really and kind of change just how we interface with the government and make things a lot less stressful for people at times.
And you look at, even we've talked a lot about chatbots, and everybody knows ChatGPT and all these different tools that are out there. But even expanding that into that customer service area where you're a citizen and you can simply go on and ask your question for what you need and have the information handed back to you almost immediately. I mean, that changes the interaction, that changes the satisfaction level of somebody dealing with government, where you may have to call, sit in a queue, a call queue for 45 minutes, or maybe you would have to go into an office and stand in line in an office for your turn to get up to the window with you're holding your ticket that says you're number 418 or whatever it is. But those types of things are available, and they're going to be using soon, and we're already seeing deployments of that. I mean, just looking at, hey, what can I do about X, whatever the problem is, and get an immediate answer back? I mean, it's critical.
Mm-hmm. All right, gentlemen, so I don't necessarily want to get political about this, but I'm thinking about, we've all seen in the media this new Department of Governmental Efficiency, and I'm curious whether you think for federal civilian agencies, is that an opportunity for artificial intelligence and sort of data modernization, infrastructure? Is that going to be a hindrance? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's going to be a necessary tool in what they're looking to do. I mean, you look at the things that Elon Musk is doing with his AI platform. You can bet that is going to be used in evaluating some of the agencies and some of the things that are going on. But it's a lot of people look at this and say, oh, they're just going to shut down different departments. It's not about shutting it down. It's literally about making them more efficient. And the tools that are in place and the tools that are coming, AI is going to be, I would say, the critical tool in helping them to achieve that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think this is, other administrations have also, government waste has been a topic for a very long time, and efficiencies, sure. Right? And I think AI, can be a huge tool in really attacking that from a different lens and a more data-based lens. And so I think that AI is a huge opportunity in that whole process. And to give this administration, a better chance at maybe making some progress than for years and years before, right? And that's not a left or right thing. That's just kind of the way the government has been, and we've tried to address it in the past. And it just, I think AI can absolutely have a huge benefit to it.
Yeah. Okay, last question for both of you. I always like to ask our experts to look ahead into the future. So if you look out, the next 2 years, 5 years, whatever that time horizon feels like, what AI and data trends are you excited about? What new opportunities do you think will be out there, and what's going to have the biggest impact on the federal civilian agency space?
Yeah, I can tell you, if you haven't heard the term agentic AI, start looking into what that means. I think that's going to have the biggest impact, especially in these civilian agencies. Think about an agent being able to not just respond to something, but to take action on what you need it to do. And you'll have these master agents, for example, that are directing actions or directing activities towards other agents, and they're all working together, these remote virtual agents all working together to complete a task. Where right now, when you're looking at a chatbot, you're asking a question, it's giving you an answer. Well, what if you can ask that chatbot, hey, a question, and then the chatbot responds back with, do you want me to do that for you? And now there's different agents across the board, could be 15, could be 20. Some of those agents could be human agents as well. So humans are not taken out of the mix, but those tasks are directed down to these different agents. And now you get something done, an execution versus just a response. I think that is going to be one of the most critical things coming in the near future that is going to impact not just federal civilian, but just every type of interaction with commercial and federal and some of our other service provider customers. That's the next wave, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. And it's you get to the point where the AI is doing the AI, right? It just continues to build on itself. And I think federal government in general tends to be a little bit behind from the leading edge of technology from the enterprise commercial type of customers. And I think that's an advantage ultimately, potentially in this case, because technology is changing so quickly, and there's another new tool, agentic RAG, right, that you just mentioned, that's a kind of a newer concept. And so there's a little bit of a letting others take the risk on implementing these technologies. And so as we look through the next 2, 3, 5 years, I do think that the civilian agencies are doing a good job of starting, at least again, around data cleansing, data modernization, and getting a good foundation to start down this path. And I think things like RAG are going to be critical to the outcomes that they're ultimately trying to achieve.
Awesome. Well, Mike, Kevin, thanks so much for coming and joining us today. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us as well. Another great episode of WWT Experts, and one of a series we have on federal civilian agencies and how they're using technology to better achieve their missions. And we've got lots of content like this out there on WWT.com on a variety of topics. A big back catalog of video content and written content you can check out anytime. A great calendar of new stuff coming up. So encourage you to head to WWT.com and check that out. Love to hear your feedback, so take the survey, drop us an email, let us know how we did. And with that, that's a wrap for today. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.